All right. So the first thing we are going to want to do for this recipe is preheat our oven to 350 degrees. I have mine going right now. If you don't already, just make sure you preheat that oven and then we can get started on our first step. All right, so first things first, you need 350 degrees. Okay, so we are going to start making the shortbread first. So you can use either a hand mixer or a stand mixer. I'm going to be using my stand mixer today. Or you can also use a whisk if you don't have any sort of automatic mixer. So the first thing we're going to do is cream the butter and the sugar. So you want to add 2 sticks of butter into your bowl or stand mixer, whatever it is that you're using. Mine are half sticks, so that's why I'm adding 4. You got any that sticks to the paper too, to make sure to get all that off. All right, and then once everyone has their butter in their bowl, give me a thumbs up and we can work on the sugar. I see a bunch already. Okay, great. So now we're going to add the sugar into the same bowl. We need to measure 1 cup of sugar and we're going to add that into the exact same bowl. So I'm just going to get my 1 cup measuring cup. Sugar is a little low, so I'm going to have to pour it. And whenever you measure dry ingredients too, always remember to level everything. I like to use the back of a knife. That's always really easy. Just clean that off. And then I just try to level it right in my bag so that I don't lose any of that excess ingredients. All right, and then that's right in the bowl with your sugar. Let me see, got some chats. Yes, I did soften the butter and it is 2 sticks of butter. I just saw those chats. Sorry if I'm a little bit late on that. For anyone who is just joining, we have preheated our ovens and we have added our 2 sticks of softened butter and 1 cup of sugar into, I have used the bowl of a stand mixer. You can use a bowl and a hand mixer or a whisk, whatever you guys have available to you. Does everyone have their sugar added in? If you don't, just let me know. Looks like everyone does. Okay, so then we're going to turn this on. I'd say do it to medium speed until you'll see the mixture will start to look light and fluffy. So let's get that started. All right, and I'm stopping halfway through just so I can scrape down. If you can see, I know it's hard to see into my bowl, but I have some unmixed parts down at the bottom, so I want that to still get mixed. So I'm going to use a spatula to scrape down the sides of the bowl. So that way everything comes together. And then we're just going to continue to mix for another minute or so. And you'll see right now the mixture looks like a pale yellow color from the butter, and it will look, once it's done and fluffy, almost white. I'm gonna put it up a notch higher to medium high. So as you can see now, just from looking on what's on the with the mixer here, it's much lighter and fluffier, and it looks almost the same color as the beater attachment. So before we do anything else, I'm just going to scrape down the sides again. So once we add more ingredients, everything will be combined. And once you guys have all reached the light and fluffy texture, give me a thumbs up and we will keep adding. How's everyone doing? I see one from Lori. Caitlin, I see you. Great. Does anyone need any more time? If you do, just let me know. That's totally fine. I just don't want to go ahead if no one is ready. All right, I see more thumbs up. Okay, I think we're all set. So now we are going to add first 2¼ cups of flour. So the same way we measured our sugar, we're going to do for the flour. And we're just going to add it right into the bowl that we have everything else in.
How much flour?
2¼ cups of flour. For anyone that's just joined, we so far have beaten our butter and sugar together until light and fluffy. And now we are just starting to add in our 2¼ cups of flour into our mixture. So I'm just adding that right into the bowl. And then once your flour is added, give me another thumbs up. We'll go on to the next ingredient. Caitlin, I see you. Tamara, I see you. Awesome. Lori, I see you. Great. I see a bunch. It looks like everyone, Ricky, I see your hands up. All right, so now we are going to add in 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. So you're just gonna grab your teaspoon measuring spoon. That's the one with the little T that we always use. We're gonna add that directly into the bowl as well. I have the perfect amount of vanilla left. All right, and then once you guys have that added in, Another thumbs up, and then we'll add our salt, and that's the last ingredient for the dough. I see lots of thumbs up. Okay, great. So now we just have to do a half teaspoon of salt. So we're just gonna get our measuring spoon for a half teaspoon. And do the exact same thing, add that into the bowl. Just like that. Perfect. All right, is everyone ready to mix? Once you are, give me another thumbs up and we'll start mixing all this together. All right, looks like everyone's good. So,
How much salt?
what was that?
How much salt?
You're gonna do half a teaspoon of salt.
Sorry, we're just starting out. How much sugar again?
Okay, I'll just go over everything really quickly for you guys, whoever just joined. So you're gonna do 2 sticks of butter with 1 cup of sugar.
1 cup of sugar.
Cream that together until it's light and fluffy.
2 sticks of butter?
2 sticks of butter, yep.
2 sticks of butter. 2 sticks.
Yes, 2.
Okay, got it. 2 sticks of butter and
1 cup of sugar.
Okay. Let's do sugar.
Yes, if you're whipping by hand, I would definitely suggest to add the flour in by increments. That'll probably just help everything incorporate a little bit better and probably save your arm a little extra work as well.
I want this. Can I try it?
All right, so for those who are mixing now, the one thing you want to make sure, especially if you are using the automatic mixer, when you start to mix this, you want to start it really slow. That way the flour doesn't just puff up and you lose some of it, all right? So I'm going to start mine on the slowest speed possible until it starts incorporating, just like this. So you can see that all that flour is staying in there. And then once you see that it starts incorporating, then you can start picking up the speed a little bit. So I'm going to slowly start to increase it by 1 notch at a time. So now it's a little bit more, everything's mixing a little bit better. So I can put it up to medium. You're going to want to mix it until you have small crumbs. It's not going to take a while, just like this. So as you can see, the mixture is like very crummy, and you want them to make sure that they're small, not that they're really big chunks. So once you have crumbs like this size, you're all set. Just gonna scrape everything off. Once everyone's done mixing, just give me a thumbs up and we will add this into the pan. Caitlin, I see you. Awesome. Lori, I see you. Great. I'm just kind of mixing mine a little bit just to make sure nothing's stuck to the bowl. I'll give everyone another minute or so. Everyone looks like they're doing a really good job. Okay, everyone good, or does anyone need more time? If you do, please just let me know. Okay,
Maybe 1 more minute?
1 minute?
Yeah.
Okay, sure, we'll wait a minute, don't worry, take your time. I know there was a few people who had mentioned ways to make this recipe gluten-free or dairy-free for allergies or intolerances. For gluten-free, you can very easily just substitute the flour for 1-to-1 gluten-free flour. That's pretty simple. Dairy-free gets a little tricky, but it's definitely possible. You could always use a dairy-free caramel with a heavy cream substitute. It might not come out to the same consistency. I haven't tested it, but sometimes that works a little bit differently with the dairy ingredients, but you can always try that out. And there's also in the document that we sent out over email, there's a link to make a date caramel as a substitute, which is just whole pitted dates with some water. So that's a really great option as well. And that's dairy free. That's another great way to make it a little more nutrient dense as well, if that's something anyone is interested in. And if people don't have that document, you can also let me know and I can add a link to that in the chat too. Seeing this question, can you add baking cocoa to make chocolate flavor? Absolutely, you definitely could. I'm not sure. I would say probably a 1/4 cup would work. You don't want to do too much because that can overpower a little bit sometimes. And I'm trying to think of typical cake or like brownie mixes. And I would say probably a 1/4 cup would be a good amount to try if you wanted to make the shortbread crust a cocoa flavor instead. Tasha, Olivia, and Simone, are you guys doing okay? Do you need a little more time? You're good? Okay, great. So we're gonna take a 13 by 9-inch pan. It's the bigger one. You can, if you want to, I know the recipe says as well, you can line it, you can spray it. I know my glass one is pretty nonstick, and we do also have 2 sticks of butter in this. So it should be pretty good on its own. Whatever you guys are comfortable with, you can do. I usually find that recipes that have a lot of butter in it, the butter kind of acts as a nonstick ingredient anyway. So whatever everyone is comfortable with, I'm just gonna leave it blank since I was good the last time I made these. So what you're gonna do, you just want to pour all of those shortbread crumbs into your pan. And because there's so much butter in here too, it pretty much doesn't stick to the bowl or anything, so you can get every last bit. And we want to press this down into the pan. You can use your hands, you can use the spatula, whatever you prefer. I like to spread it out as evenly as I can first before I start pushing it down, just so that I can see that there's like pretty much the same amount in every nook and cranny. Just like that. And then I'm gonna try and get everything off my spatula before I do this. So I've got my crumbs pretty evenly laid out across my baking sheet. I like to use a combination of my hand and my spatula. So I take my spatula, I lay it flat across the crumbs, and then I take my fingers and I start in the corners and I just use my hand to press down onto the spatula. So that it gets nice and flat. And it stays pretty even. So I'm just going to go all across the pan, flattening. So it should kind of look like packed sand, like when you're on the beach and you pack sand into your sand buckets. It kind of looks like packed sand. Just like that. I'm going to try and get all the excess off here. All right. And then once you guys have everything packed in, give me a thumbs up. We'll do our last step before we add these into the oven. Looks like everyone's all good. So you're just gonna take a fork and in no specific pattern, but kind of evenly across the pan, you're just gonna poke some holes into the dough. Doesn't have to be perfect, but you want to make sure every area has some sort of poke. You don't want one part of the dough to have nothing and all of your fork holes to be in one part. So as long as it's even, you should be all good.
Hold on. Hi.
You have a question?
Oh, you got it. Okay. Hey,
You have a question?
oh, hey, I'm doing this cooking class now. Can I call you back in about a half hour? Around noon your time.
All right. Is everyone all ready to put in the oven? If you need more time, that's totally fine. We can wait. If anyone is ready, what you can start to do, because I realized I forgot, you can start, if your caramels are wrapped, you can start unwrapping some of your caramels while we get everything together before everything goes in the oven, just so that everyone can be on the same page and we can keep going at the same pace. And once you guys are ready to put stuff in the oven, you can just unmute and let me know that you're all good, and then we will go on. And in the meantime, I'm just gonna unwrap some of my caramels. If you have them unwrapped already, that's awesome. You're one step ahead of me. I completely forgot that these had plastic on them.
I have a question.
Yes,
The dough is pretty dry. Is it supposed to be pretty dry?
yes. Shortbread typically ends up on the drier side. That's why it had that crummy texture. And they do kind of crumb a little bit when you eat them as well, but that is the desired texture. So if it does look dry like that, that's what it's supposed to look like.
Okay. And then one more question. Is
Yes.
it 2 packs of 11 ounce?
Yes.
Or was it total 11 ounce? So is it 22 ounces or 11
So
ounces?
each one is 11 ounces. You want 2 of these. You could always, if you only have one bag, I think that's totally fine. Based on the recipe, it does make a little bit of a thicker caramel. So if you only have one bag of 11 ounces, just half the amount of heavy cream and you should be totally fine.
Okay. 'Cause
Your
we
caramel layer might
found
just be a little
one.
thinner, that's
We
all.
found one, but then we also found this too. I don't know if you can see it.
Okay, I would say stick with the one bag. I
Okay.
don't know how the squeezable sauce will
Okay.
interact with everything else. If you guys want to add it, honestly, you totally can, but I think it's also equally fine to just do the one bag. And then just half the amount of heavy cream. I believe we use a half cup. So just do a quarter cup instead.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So we need to add more.
How is everyone doing? We're all good? Okay, great. So now all we're gonna do, we're just gonna take the shortbread, we're gonna put it into the oven for 30 minutes. So after you put it in, make sure you set a 30-minute timer. And then we'll keep unwrapping these. If anyone does have your caramels unwrapped already, you can go ahead and add your 1/2 cup of heavy cream and then start to heat it over the heat. Because we pretty much just let that sit for a little bit. And this also does make a little bit of a larger recipe. It's the recipe is very easy to half, so you could always do that as well and do a smaller baking pan, and you could half the recipe really easily. Because it does make a quite a few. So if you need quite a few, that's great. If you want to make them and you don't need as many, just half it, and that would work very well. Right. I think for the sake of time as well, I'm probably going to make a half recipe for the caramel. Just because it takes a little while to unwrap all of these. So that way we're not sitting here too long unwrapping them. If you guys want to do the same, you can. If you want to make the full recipe, totally fine. And what I do, I have another shortbread prepared. So after we make our caramel and our chocolate, if our shortbread is not ready from the oven yet, I'm going to show you guys how you would layer everything so that you know how to do it once they come out. So for this, the full recipe is 2 bags of caramels with a 1/2 cup of heavy cream. If you want to do a half recipe, it would be 1 bag of caramels and a 1/4 cup of heavy cream. Whatever works for you. Like I did say, the full recipe does make a lot, so it would be much thicker of a layer of caramel. So if that's something you like, you can do that. If that's something you don't want, you can do the half. You could also always make the full and then use the leftovers. You could store them in the fridge and use them as a caramel sauce for ice cream or anything like that. How is everyone doing? Is anyone else unwrapping still, or does everyone else pretty much have theirs unwrapped? Okay. If everyone was just waiting for me, then I'd keep going. But if everyone's on the same page as me, then we can just keep trudging along. Okay, so if you wanted to do a date caramel instead of the regular caramel, it's really, really easy to make. I can send a link to the recipe that I suggested in here before we sign off. You pretty much just need whole pitted dates. You want to make sure they are pitted, or if they're not, then you just have to take the pits out. And then most recipes, I believe it's just hot water, and there might be a little bit of vanilla flavoring in there as well. You usually just blend it all together and that's it. There's no heat involved. It's completely dairy free. And dates are really, really good source of fiber. So that is a good thing to add into if you guys like the flavor of dates or if you need dairy free options. I apologize. I definitely should have told us all to unwrap these beforehand, but if we're all doing it, then that's okay. As you can see too, this recipe is pretty easy to make. This honestly might be the most time consuming part of it, is unwrapping your caramels. So if you have a team with you, you could unwrap these really, really quick. Once I unwrap the caramels, what do I do with them? Okay, I have my saucepan that I'm gonna be using on the heat, so I'm just throwing them right in there after I unwrap them. You guys can all do that too. If you want to put them in a bowl first, you can too, but because all we're gonna do is add the cream to these and then we heat it on the stove. So you can throw them right into your saucepan. I'm getting there. Does anyone else have any questions right now, or is everyone doing okay? Yeah, yeah, these are, I should have remembered too, because I made some cookies and I used these caramels over Christmas and I remember sitting unwrapping them for so long. So I'm surprised I completely forgot until the start of class. And I was like, uh-oh. I remember how long this took. So if you guys do this again in the future, remember about unwrapping the caramels. Oh, these chats are so great. Yes, this wrapping is bringing us all together because we are all going through it at the same time. Thank you guys for being so patient. I know this is tedious. what is everyone else at? I have a few more left. Is everyone trudging along too, or does anyone need a lot more time? Feel free to unmute and tell me, or you can put it in the chat or just nod if you're good. I see a thumbs up. Okay, great. Doing okay. All right, I see another thumbs up from Joshy, awesome. Okay, I have two more left. Is everyone okay if I start going over everything else after I finish unwrapping my last two caramels? Okay, awesome. Cooking. Okay, so we're gonna cook, I'll go over it once we get started, but we are going to cook the caramels and the heavy cream together. I would say medium to low heat. You don't want it too hot, but you don't want it too low. And you don't need to constantly stir it. You can keep watching it. We will be melting the chocolate at the same time as that kind of cooks down. So you can stir it every once in a while, but you don't need to stand over it and keep stirring. All right. So now I'm just going to add my heavy cream really quick before we add it onto the stove. Again, I am now doing a half recipe so that I don't have to unwrap another bag of caramels. So I'm adding a 4th cup of heavy cream. But if you are making the full recipe, you're going to be adding a half cup. All right. And I'm just adding that right in there. And then we're gonna get over to the stove. And we're gonna put this over medium low heat. And then you just want to make sure you have a heat-proof spatula to stir it. So I'm just going to stir this once just to make sure all the caramels are as coated in the cream as they can be. It's going to be a little hard to stir right at first. So everything's just kind of coated in the cream, and then I'm going to let it sit for a little bit. How is everyone doing? Good? Are we ready to melt chocolate, or do we need a little more time? All right, I'm seeing mostly thumbs up, so I'm assuming we're all good to melt chocolate. Okay, great. So I'm going to come back over here. You're going to need a microwave safe bowl. I'm just going to use a measuring cup. And then we're just going to measure 2 cups of chocolate chips. I'm just going to add them right into. So it's pretty much, that actually measures out to be pretty much 1 bag. So if you have a 12-ounce bag of chocolate chips, 2 cups is one whole bag, so you can just do the bag. You don't even have to worry about measuring them into 2 cups. And when we melt chocolate, the thing you want to be really careful about is making sure that it doesn't burn. So you always want to do it in 30-second intervals. So you're going to microwave it for 30 seconds, take it out, stir it a little, and keep doing that until it's nice and smooth. Just stir my caramels again. I think I have my heat a little too low, so I'm gonna put it up to medium, see how that goes. Usually the first 30 seconds of the chocolate, it doesn't look like anything happens. Like you can tell mine don't look like any have melted at all, but it's good just to get a spoon in there and mix them up anyway. Just so that whatever heat that they have gets evenly distributed, and just keep doing that. So now we're just gonna kind of eye the caramel and the chocolate at the same time. You're stuffing peanut butter for the caramel into the, yeah, I think if you mix the confectioner sugar with the peanut butter, that's great. That will probably give it the kind of the taste and the similar texture to the peanut butter that's in a Reese's peanut butter cup. So that would be great. So it won't be as, I guess, chewy. If you wanted it to be a little chewier or maybe similar to the consistency of caramel without being really, really sticky so it doesn't get stuck in your braces, you could do some maple syrup with the peanut butter as well. That might make it a little bit, the texture a little bit smoother, or I guess a little more thinner, you could say. And then once you add that into the fridge before you eat them, it'll probably just be a little, maybe a little bit similar to the texture of what the caramel would be, but it's honestly all preference. I think it would be really great with the texture of like what a Reese's peanut butter cup is too. So I think that's definitely good to try. I think the date caramel would probably still be a little too sticky for braces too. So I wouldn't try that because the dates are pretty sticky. That's why they are a really great sub for caramel candy. But I think you have a really great idea going. And yeah, you could even add a little bit of sea salt to it too, because I know a lot of people like the salty and the sweet, so you could do that. Whatever you guys want to try. You could even do almond butter too. I don't know if you like almond butter over peanut butter. Either of those would work. My chocolate is getting there. It's kind of clumpy now. That's a good sign. That means it's melting. And you want to be careful too, because chocolate does have a point where it starts to burn a little bit, but only on the edges. I'm just bringing you guys over here because my caramel is starting to soften. So you can tell now it's starting to melt into the cream. You just want to keep stirring. And eventually it'll all be a nice thick liquid consistency, which is exactly what we're looking for. So this is what mine's looking like right now. I still got some chunks in there, but we're getting there. All right. Everything is smelling really good, so I'm getting hungry. I don't know about anyone else. Okay, yeah, this is a great example of the chocolate too. So in the top of my chocolate, I don't know if you guys can tell, there's a lot of the chunks still, but the bottom was a lot of more fully melted. So this is a great time where mixing also helps to melt the chunks from the residual heat that's left over in the cup. Because if you heat it too much, then it starts to get really, really tacky and sticking. And then it gets like really thick to a point of no return and you can't save it. So it's always good that once you have some liquid in there, if you see almost all of my clumps are gone now. So I think I might do it one more time, but I'm going to do it for 15 seconds rather than 30 because I can always add more, but I can never take back. So I'm going to do 15 more seconds and I think my chocolate should be perfect then. My caramel's almost there too. All right, yeah, so now all my lumps are completely gone. It's nice and smooth. So my chocolate is all set. I think I did maybe, I want to say 5 or 6 30 seconds total, and then I did 15. If you don't have a microwave, you can melt chocolate over the stove as well. There's 2 different ways to do it. You could just add it right into the pot, and then you just wash it really carefully, the same way that we're melting the caramel. You could also melt chocolate over, it's called a double boiler. So what you would do is you would put some water in your pot and you bring that to a light boil, and then you use a heat safe bowl and you place it on top of your pot, and then kind of the heat from the lightly boiling water melts the chocolate as well. That I think is more of like the proper professional baking way to do it. But it's definitely not something that you have to do. But I believe it melts the chocolate really, really nice and smoothly. So if that's something you want to try, that's a really great option for doing it over the stove. But you could also easily just melt it into the pot, the same way that we're melting the caramel. All right. I just turned my heat down to low on my caramel because I saw it was bubbling a little too much for my liking. So I just turned it down a little bit just to be safe. I have maybe a couple little chunks in there, but overall it's pretty smooth now, which is exactly what we're looking for. And it's the same, so I'm gonna actually turn it off now. Same way with the chocolate, the residual heat will just melt any of those chunks that are left. So this is perfect. All right. How's everyone doing melting? Does anyone have any questions? Is everyone done? Looks like some people are still working away. I see a few thumbs up. All right. So since we still have some time left for our shortbread, what I'm gonna do is just use my extra one that happens to be actually a half recipe, and I'm gonna show you guys how to layer it. It's really, really simple, but just so that you get an idea once your shortbreads come out of the oven after class. So very carefully, you want to make sure you're using an oven mitt with the hot pan from the caramel. You're just gonna pour that right over the shortbread. You want to make sure you get everything out of there. It should be relatively nonstick to the pan while it's hot, so That's really good. You should be able to get mostly everything. And then once you get whatever you can out of there, you want to put some hot water in your pan. So that way, whatever caramel residue is left is not stuck when you have to wash it. All right, so I'm just now going to spread this out. It does cool a little quickly, so you want to go as quickly as you can, but you don't need to go super fast. But you just want to spread it as evenly as you can across the shortbread layer. Just like that. I can see there's some on this edge that's not as thick. I'm just shaking it a little bit too to get everything settled. So as you can see, this is pretty much, it's like, I'd say maybe half of the thickness of the shortbread layer. If you did a full recipe, it would probably be equally as thick. So that's just something to keep in mind depending on what you like. And then after you layer the caramel, you're just going to do the exact same thing with the chocolate. I'm going to use a little at a time. I don't know if I'll need all of it since this one's a little smaller. And then this is kind of where you can get creative. If you want, what you can do exactly what the recipe calls for and just kind of spread it evenly. You can make, you can swirl it around if you want. It might be a little bit easier if you let the caramel set a little bit. I'm obviously doing it right after just for the sake of time, so I don't keep you guys here too long. And it is mixing a little bit, but that honestly could be really good. So mine is mixing a little bit, but I actually like the way it looks. It looks really pretty, so I'm gonna go with it. So if you want to have a complete chocolate layer on top of the caramel, I would say let the caramel sit after you poured it around 5, maybe 10 minutes, depending on what the consistency is. You can always test it with your finger. If it's still really, really thin and sticky, you can wait a little bit longer. But if it's a little bit harder and closer to the texture of what the caramel was like when it was in the wrapper, then that's totally fine. And then you can pour ahead. If you want it to mix a little bit like mine did, then you can just pour it right on top. And then the last step, if you'd like, would be just to add some salt on the top for that kind of sweet, salty flavor combination. So I'm just going to take a little pinch and just sprinkle it over the top just like that. That looked good to me. And then once you have everything in your container, I used sea salt. You could do any kind of salt. If you have like the really nice flaky salt, you could use that too. If you don't have any sort of flake salt, but you still really like the flavor, you could easily use table salt as well, whatever you guys have. And then once you have everything in your dish like this, you want to refrigerate it. Let's see, how long does the recipe say? You want to do at least 20 minutes. That way everything's a little bit cooled down. Because if you tried to cut them right now, it'd be really, really sticky and everything would stick to your knife and it would be a little bit messy. So you just want to do it at least 20 minutes and then you can cut them as big or as small as you would like. And they should last. I would keep them in the fridge. They should last, I would say, a week or two in the fridge, just because everything is going to be refrigerated. I know my other shortbread just finished, so I'm just gonna grab that out really quick, and then you guys can go ahead and layer it. You want it to be a good golden color, not too dark, not too light. But other than that, that's pretty much the recipe. Does anyone have any questions for me at all before you guys start layering? I can answer anything.
The shortbread was cooking for 300, 30 minutes at 300 degrees,
350.
350. Okay.
So if you had it at 300, I would say it'll probably need maybe another 10, 15 minutes. Just keep an eye on it. Like I said, you kind of want like a nice light golden color. So
Okay.
once you see it kind of reach this color, you should be all set.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions from anyone? Looks like everyone's all good. Yes, I would say honestly, the hardest part of this recipe was unwrapping those caramels. Thank you everyone for being so patient about that. I know we all kind of had to do it at the same time. So I know that wasn't as fun as everything else, but I hope overall everyone still had a great time. I always love cooking with you guys. Feel free, please send us pictures of your final products and pictures of you guys cooking. I love to see all of you guys cooking. The next class, like I said, is May 7th. So if you want to sign up for that, just go to the Eventbrite. I'll be doing that class as well. If there's nothing else, then I wish you guys the best Sunday and I will see you soon. All right. Thank you guys. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
ก็จะไปด้วย